how to make, or how I made, this all jigs everything workbench. Let's get into it. I started by cutting 9 2x4s down to 54 inches for the new bench top. With my joiner out of commission at the moment and confidence that I could get the counter to laminate well enough, I used a stacking method to quote-unquote square the edges of the boards. Then plane the faces. Is this the perfect way to get the planks ready to laminate? No, but given the broken jointer, perfectly fine for my purposes. With those ready, I glued up. Using calls and brute force to mitigate the fallout of my transgressions. While that cured, I set about demoing the old used and abused workbench, stripping it for parts I'd used for the upgrade and throwing out what needed pitching. Using the old ply bench top, I cut new, sturdier top and back frame pieces for the drawer set to keep the drawers on track better. I cut them wide enough to account for the width of the drawer boxes, plus 1 inch for the new hardware, and plus 1.5 inches to cap the perpendicular ply frame pieces. Then remove the old hardware. After that, I sunk a few pocket holes in the side panels that I'd used to put the drawer frame back together. With the test fit looking good and glue cured, I turned back to the bench top. Planing away squeeze out and lamination variation. Then gave it a finishing level sand down. With the top tidied up, I trimmed the edges flush. Time for finish. I used a few coats of water-based polyurethane. While that dried, and with the final depth of the countertop figured out, I turned to trimming the legs of the workbench down about 1/8 inch so the new bench top could still act as one wing of the miter station, sitting adjacent to the miter saw. With those all ready, I reaffixed the drawer frame to the workbench. Then measured and marked the lines for the new drawer hardware. and got to reinstalling the drawers. With those all done, I went through the same laminating, planing, sanding, and finishing process to prep the small tracked board for the face of the workbench. Once it's finished dried, I clamped it roughly into place so I could then clamp and anchor the workbench top to sit flush with the faceboard. Anchor the faceboard into place, I used a scrap piece of old workbench anchored to the bench leg to set the placement for an additional upright. Then anchored the upright to the top and bottom of the bench. Then remove the scrap. I didn't anchor the faceboard into place yet. Instead, I turned to measuring and marking the placement of the tracks for the top of the table. I chose spacing that I thought would work for just about any average-sized workpiece, with a few closer placed tracks toward one end in case I came up with something a little less than average size in the future. I used the bench top track marks as guides for the faceboard before temporarily removing it while I cut out the dovetail tracks. Using a trim router and edge guide, I cut the tracks in 3 passes, 2 with a straight bit to clear the way and once with a dovetail at the final depth. Then, using the table and the new MicroJig gear, I did the same for the faceboard. Then anchored it into place. And that's a wrap. If you want to see how I made this nifty dust port or just other behind the scenes content, join us over on Patreon. We like to have a good time. Link below. Next time, I wrap up this series of shop upgrades with the drill press cart and jig ready table. After that, we're back into the hardwoods. Until next time. And if you're one of my little friends who watches my projects to fall asleep, well, that's all right with me.